Russia says it does not want a war with Ukraine, but Russia's actions don't match its words. The military build-up keeps getting bigger. In Ukraine, schools are conducting emergency drills. Children are being trained to deal with bomb threats. Germany has finally sprouted a spine. It says it will cancel the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline if Russia invades Ukraine. But other European players say Berlin's offer is too little too late. The US has taken the matter to the United Nations Security Council. May we ask, which was the last conflict the UNSC could diffuse? As things stand, both sides are pushing their luck. Tonight, we'll bring you up to speed with the developments and bring you a special report on Putin's plan. Has he overplayed his hand? Has the Russian president become a hostage to his own tough posturing? Plus, an exclusive interview with Ukraine's top diplomat on Kyiv's options and strategy. You have to listen to what he said about Germany. Also on the show tonight, another scare from Wuhan. Scientists there have warned of a deadlier coronavirus. This one is one mutation away from infecting humans and will apparently kill 1 out of 3 patients. Iran's state television is hacked. A chant saying death to Khomeini is broadcast. Tehran blames a group backed by the West for it. Another fallout of the pandemic. Online romance bloomed, as did the scams. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been lost. And Minnie Mouse has a new dress. The internet is divided. We'll tell you why. We begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
A family of 4 Indian nationals found frozen to death near the Canada-US border has now been identified. Canadian authorities say the family moved around the country for some time and was driven to the border by someone.
There was no abandoned vehicle located on the Canadian side of the border. This clearly indicates that someone drove the family to the border and then left the scene.
In a case now being described as that of human smuggling. A day after North Korea conducted its 6th missile test this month, North Korean state media releases pictures of leader Kim Jong-un visiting a munitions factory which is reportedly producing a major weapons system. The launches have triggered international condemnation and a new sanctions push from the United States. The United States bans telecom giant China Unicom over national security and espionage concerns. The firm will have to stop providing telecom services in America within 60 days. The US is concerned about threats posed by Chinese state-owned carriers to its telecommunications networks. With the Winter Games just a week away, China locks down an entire area near Beijing this week over a handful of coronavirus cases, but made no public announcement about fresh restrictions. About 1.2 million people in Chong'an new area are no longer allowed to enter or leave residential compounds. Tech giant Google is investing up to $1 billion in India's second-largest telecom operator, Bharti Airtel, a move it hopes will drive down its cost of smartphones in a massive market. Google will also acquire a 1.28% stake in the company. Support for the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern drops to its lowest level since she took over in 2017. This as New Zealand reckons with higher living costs and COVID-19 outbreak. Work has begun on Poland's border with Belarus on a $394 million wall to stop migrants pushed across by Belarus from entering the country illegally. The death toll from tropical storm Ana that struck 3 southern African countries of Madagascar, Mozambique and Malawi rises to 77. Rescue teams battle to repair damaged infrastructure and help tens of thousands of victims. Rafael Nadal will face world number 2 Daniil Medvedev in the men's singles final of the Australian Open on Sunday. Nadal beat 7th seed Matteo Berrettini in 4 sets and is now just 1 win away from a record-breaking 21st Grand Slam title. The de facto top seed Medvedev took down world number 4 Stefanos Tsitsipas in the semi-final to reach his 2nd straight final in Melbourne. Former Zimbabwe captain Brendan Taylor has been banned from all cricket for 3.5 years by the ICC for his delay in reporting a spot-fixing approach. Taylor said he was blackmailed into accepting money from an Indian businessman in October 2019, but never went through with the arrangement. However, the 35-year-old has accepted the ban as well as a separate charge of breaching the doping code.
For 3 months, we have been reporting about the build-up near Ukraine. We have shown you what's happening on the front, the Russian deployment both at the border and on the high seas. Now let's show you what's happening in Kyiv. This is a school in the Ukrainian capital. These students are attending a class, not the kind you would expect students to attend. These students are being taught how to recognize IEDs, improvised explosive devices. Bombs of all shapes and sizes are on the table, from grenades to a missile. This training has become necessary for Ukrainian schools. They've been evacuated several times in the past few weeks. The reason is hoax bomb threats. So far, more than 300 such threats have been reported. The people of Ukraine are living in fear as Moscow continues to flex its muscle. Russian tanks are practicing how to fire. Even the S-400 missile system is part of these drills. In the north, Russian jets have arrived in Belarus. It's a vantage point from where Russia can target Kyiv. Russia and Belarus are about to hold joint drills. Reports say these drills will happen close to the Ukrainian border. In the Black Sea, Russian forces look formidable. This is a Russian ship conducting an artillery firing drill. So the Russian military is now targeting Ukraine from all directions. Is Russia seriously considering an offensive, or is all of this bluster? Has the Russian president boxed himself in? Or does he have an ace up his sleeve? On Gravitas tonight, we'll discuss all of it. As always, we'll start with the latest. The intelligence assessments are looking more sinister. Some say Russia is engineering a change of guard in Kyiv. This is from the British intelligence. They published an assessment this week. It says the Kremlin has a plan to install a pro-Russian leader in Ukraine. Not surprising. Moscow wants a loyalist in the president's chair. The question is, who is this person? This man, former Ukrainian lawmaker Yevhen Murayev. He seems to be Moscow's top choice. Yevhen Murayev heads a pro-Russia political party. He owns a television channel. Murayev does not like Zelensky, and he makes no effort to hide it. He says President Zelensky is controlled by the West. Allow me to read one of his statements for you. Zelensky is a hostage and he is being blackmailed by MI6, the CIA, anyone. Tomorrow they can force him to launch an offensive against the Donbass, which would lead to a full-scale war. Murayev also does not like international institutions like the IMF. And here is perhaps why Moscow likes him. Just like Vladimir Putin, this man, Murayev, says Kyiv is to blame for the current tensions. So Murayev checks the right boxes for Russia. Is he involved in a plot to take Zelensky down? Murayev has called such claims baseless and absurd. The Russian Foreign Ministry has termed this British assessment disinformation. So we come back to the question, what is on Putin's mind? Will he invade militarily or strike the Ukrainian government from within? This is what the Russian president said today while speaking to his Security Council.
Today we discuss Security Council's direct responsibility zone, Russia's foreign policy. The Russian Foreign Ministry prepared an updated version of Russia's foreign policy conception project. This document, of course, is part of strategic planning. Russian Foreign Ministry took into account all of the recent world changes, including the changes that have occurred with foreign policy in the last 5 years.
Of course, there is no mention of Ukraine. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov did say today that Russia does not want a war. But Moscow's actions suggest otherwise. Putin's moves are forcing the West to make some hard choices. Germany has been forced to respond. So far, Berlin was proving to be the weak link in the Western defense. But today it said it was ready to axe Nord Stream 2 if Russia invades Ukraine.
And we made it clear that the renewed military action against Ukraine would have massive consequences for Russia. On this basis, we are working on a strong sanctions package. In the event of renewed aggression, the full range of our responses will be available, including Nord Stream 2. Yes, we want to engage in dialogue at all times. But in view of the current situation, we also need to be tough and make it unmistakably clear that the sovereign equality of states and the cornerstones of the European peace order are not negotiable.
Und die Grundpfeiler der europäischen Friedensordnung sind nicht verhandelbar.
That's a big commitment from Germany. This is an $11 billion gas pipeline we're talking about, but Germany's partners in Europe say this is not good enough. Smaller European states like Latvia and Austria are slamming Berlin. Latvia's defense minister, Artis Pabriks, has given an interview. Let me tell you what he said about Germany, and I'm quoting. How are you acting yourself when it comes to Lithuania, Russia, China? It's immoral and hypocritical. It's driving a division line between West and East in Europe. Germans forgot already that Americans were granting their security in the Cold War, but they should remember it's their moral duty. Latvia says Germany has an immoral and hypocritical relationship with Russia, their words. What about Austria? It says sanctioning the Nord Stream 2 is not a credible threat.
Wir sind uns alle einer Meinung.
I think in terms of financial sanctions and trade of goods, everything is on the table. To be honest, I don't think that a project such as Nord Stream 2, that doesn't even have an operating license yet, is a substantial threat to Russia and to Moscow. There are other measures, and I would caution against the idea that we should impose sanctions based on individual keywords. That we say, if it doesn't include Nord Stream or SWIFT, then the sanctions package is weak. That is not the case.
Ossetien, Abchasien, Transnistrien, Donbass und die Krim besetzt.
So Europe is struggling to get its act together. What about the US? Washington is struggling too. US President Joe Biden spoke to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. According to one report, the call did not go well. There were serious disagreements over how the two sides are assessing the Russian threat. The White House has dismissed this claim, but Kyiv has once again issued a warning about the Russian buildup.
Russia has brought to the border 300 more tanks than last spring, but the number of modern anti-tank missiles that we possess now, which include Stugna, Korsar, Javelin, are more than potential targets.
More soldiers, more advanced weapons and more drills. This is Russia's response. Moscow is raising the stakes. But what does it hope to get out of this escalation? To discuss all of this and more, we are joined by a special guest tonight, Vadim Prystaiko. He's a top Ukrainian diplomat. He was the foreign minister of Ukraine until 2020. And before that, he also led Ukraine's mission to NATO. Presently, he's serving as Ukraine's ambassador to the United Kingdom. Vadim Prystaiko, welcome to WION.
I also appreciate our talk. Thank you very much.
How do you assess the current situation?
I believe the stakes are really high, and this number of Russians at our border is extremely dangerous, and as many nations would probably run for cover already. But because it's not the first time, this has been with us for 7 years. I mean, this war, we already lost 13,500 people. So we understand where it can all lead to, but at the same time, we are prepared for the invasion. We don't have to have it. We don't want to have it. We're trying to avoid it diplomatically and other means. Our partners with us, but we know how all of it can end up.
Multiple reports claim that Russia is escalating the build-up around Ukrainian borders. What is your intelligence picking up?
Yeah, that's the problem with intelligence. They always want to be away from the cameras and away from light. But what I can tell you that they are more or less now accumulating their forces 200 up to 300 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, meaning that it's not imminent danger, it's not today or tomorrow, but the forces are accumulated in such a number and in such short distance in comparison to the huge territory of Russian Federation that this is posing immediate threat to us. What bothers us that they're bringing in the tactical rocket systems and the helicopters. These things is purely attacking equipment, and they have to be closer. We will see if they get closer. That will mean that we're coming to the final stage of preparedness of Russians. We also count in things like, like mobile laundries, if they're enough to support such a number of people, the kitchens, the field hospitals. All of these things will indicate they are preparing and going up and up in escalation. At some point, it will be unavoidable. The war will be unavoidable.
The US and NATO have submitted written responses to Russia's proposals. Moscow is not satisfied with the response, but the Russian foreign minister has left the door open for talks. You say war seems unavoidable. Do you also believe there is a diplomatic solution possible to resolve this crisis?
You know, I'm not sure how it works in your part of the globe, but I believe that rules are quite universal. You come to bargain and you're raising your hand so high in expectation that you would receive at least something. So some of the claims Russians were making, like NATO, it would roll down back to the 1997 lines. I mean, who even remember where NATO was in 1997? Why 1997? Or that NATO will withdraw from Bulgaria and Romania, already members of NATO. So these claims are so unreasonable, unjustified, that Russians were making them just to cover something they actually wanted to receive. And I believe they received some promising things, like discussion of where the short and medium-range missiles will be stationed in Europe, what other conventional troops will be and where will be stationed. But there are some things they will not be satisfied, like the open door policy for NATO, which is so dear to Ukrainian hearts. We wanted this principle to be there, so Ukrainian option is open.
Why do you think Russia is escalating tensions by sending troops and conducting more drills? Do you think this is a tactic to put more pressure on Kyiv and also your partners in the West?
I believe this is tactics, although you're right. They were having their exercises over the years, and sometimes they would bring 3 times more forces in close proximity to Ukrainian borders and Western borders. This one is not enough forces to topple down our military, because even at the border, active personnel is already Ukrainians, 250,000 of people. So if you take the usual proportion for the attacking, that has to be at least 3 times more than defending forces, it's nearly not enough. But they knowing how sensitive West is to the real catastrophe of war, and reminding themselves how less important for Russians the lives of their soldiers in comparison to value, human value in the West. They are, working as some sort of political ricketeer. They are creating problem, like escalating, then expecting the other side to move, to meet them somewhere in between. That's a very simple tactic for the negotiations, and I believe that West understands it. At the same time, Russians believe that West will be in a position to pressure Ukraine to go a bit more, to step a bit more in the concessions they expect. And that is something we would like as Ukraine to avoid.
Yesterday, Germany was criticized for offering helmets to Ukraine. Today in Parliament, the Ukrainian defense minister said that we do not accept the official position of Germany on the delivery of weapons and consider this position as threatening to Europe's security, and it de facto encourages the aggressor. What do you make of Germany's response so far? Has Berlin been a reliable partner for Kyiv?
I understand what Germans are doing, what they think, and they believe that they have expertise, and we have to recognize they're experts. Last 2 world wars showing the expertise in such matters. So I also believe they learned some very painful lessons from their past, and they try to resolve everything by diplomacy, forgetting that actually they were invited in NATO. After 10 years, they just brought the devastation and enormous tragedy to the whole continent, and more or less to the same world. And now denying our right to become a member of NATO. This is something we believe that they're missing, at least missing in the picture. What, for example, the UK is doing, UK was not providing us weapons all these years. They were coming gradually to the point when they understood that diplomacy is exhausting itself. We have to move up in prepare Ukraine prepared, because Ukraine also showed the will to fight. We were not, crying and then walking and trying to hide somewhere. We stand tall. We lost so many people, but we showed that we are eager to defend ourselves. When you're eager to defend, people will come to help you. That's what is happening right now.
You're not mincing your words. Do you think India can play a role in the current situation?
Very interesting. You are having a growing role in the global scale, And for many, many decades, you were trying to, leading this non-alignment movement, trying to stay neutral. Many nations would try to do it, but not many of nations have a capacity and a scale and a size of India. That's why you are allowed by historic events to play the roles you are playing. But we believe that you can stay aside of the most of the processes in the world. The world is getting more and more interconnected. You will have to take the interest in European affairs if you want to be a really global nation, which I see the tendency here. So I do believe that you will take the more interest, and this we were talking with you today is just showing that there is growing interest of Indian population towards the world events. If your voice can be heard, I believe if Russians would hear and listen carefully.
Interesting. Vadim Prystaiko, thank you very much for joining us here on WION.
I also appreciate our talk. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now, right from the start, we've compared the standoff to poker. Bluffs, double bluffs, a very intense and high-stakes game of geopolitics. Vladimir Putin is a seasoned player, but this time he may have overplayed his hand. In November and December, Putin was in control. He was acting. The West was reacting. But now the tables are turning. The West is flooding Ukraine with lethal weapons. They've also rejected Putin's demands. So the Russian president is stuck with two options now. Number one, attack. Go to war with Ukraine. Russia may win that war, but at what cost? Hundreds of dead soldiers and later on a full-blown insurgency. It is strategic and economic suicide. Option number two is retreat. Putin can swallow the humiliation and pull back his troops. He can save his economy and his military, but it would be political suicide. The myth of Vladimir Putin will be busted. He will lose face in Russia and abroad. It's a lose-lose situation for the Russian president. A suicide mission on one side, utter humiliation on the other. Where did things go wrong for him? After all, Putin had planned the standoff perfectly. Last year, we saw two Russian build-ups. One in March and April, and the second, which is still ongoing. The first standoff was largely ignored by the West because it was obviously a stunt. All the troops were moved in broad daylight. There were no supply lines, no medical support. It was clearly a ruse. Everyone saw through it. So this time, Russia planned better. Some of the weapons and troops arrived in secret. Supply lines were established. Field hospitals were set up. The message was clear. This time, Putin meant business. So why are things unraveling now? Because of two reasons. Number one, he overplayed his hand. In the early months of the standoff, Putin had the advantage, but he squandered it. His demands from NATO were too unrealistic. Joe Biden was never going to accept them. And reason number two, the West was better prepared this time. Again, Putin's miscalculation. A long standoff gave NATO a lot of time to coordinate, to send weapons to Ukraine. So by the business end of January, the equation had changed. The hesitant allies, like Germany and Turkey, were convinced now. Berlin has agreed to cancel Nord Stream 2 if Russia invades. Turkey's Erdogan says Russia would be unwise to attack. In other words, NATO had enough time to put its house in order. Plus, they've flooded Ukraine with modern weapons. What could Russia have done differently? Perhaps their demands from NATO should have been more measured. You see, diplomacy is all about give and take, but Russia's demands were a non-starter, a veto against Ukraine's NATO membership, and a pullback from Eastern Europe. NATO was never going to accept those terms. Also, Putin failed to build multi-front pressure. What do I mean by multi-front? China and the Indo-Pacific. That could have been a game changer for Russia. If Beijing had made moves in Taiwan and Russia made moves on Ukraine, the US military would have been spread too thin. Joe Biden may have even considered accepting Russia's proposals. But the opposite happened. China's support was limited to words. The only distraction for America was Kim Jong-un's missile tests, 6 of them in 27 days. It was a record for North Korea, but not enough to distract the West. So for all the bravado, all the troops and fighter jets, Vladimir Putin is the one who is boxed in. He's stuck between a suicidal invasion and a humiliating retreat. In fact, he's worse off than last year. Putin has given his neighbors an excuse to join the NATO. He has pushed them towards the Western camp. I can give you two examples, Sweden and Finland. Neither of them are members of NATO. They were happy remaining neutral. But when Russia tried to stop NATO from recruiting them, they pushed back. Let me tell you what Finland's president said. Finland's room to maneuver and freedom of choice also include the possibility of military alignment and of applying for NATO membership should we ourselves so decide. This is Finland. As I said, Putin may have overplayed his hand. Right now, his best option is to cut his losses and reach a compromise, maybe delay Ukraine's NATO membership or agree to focus the talks on eastern Ukraine, basically a symbolic victory, something he can sell back home in Moscow. His other option is to keep the standoff alive, see where it goes. We've seen it during the Cold War. It has happened before. But does Russia have that kind of money now? Remember, NATO is made up of 30 countries. 30, that's 30 financial contributors. Russia is funding all of this alone. So sustaining this build-up indefinitely may not be an option. The fact is, Putin is a hostage to his own position. He could have stuck with last year's status quo. But like all poker players, he forgot the golden rule. Quit when you're ahead. And here's something else that does not quit. The coronavirus, not the one from Wuhan. This is another coronavirus. But interestingly, or ominously, it was flagged by scientists in Wuhan. They're calling it neocov. How is this one different from the Wuhan virus? You see, coronavirus does not refer to one virus. It refers to a group of viruses. It's a type like SARS-CoV-1 or SARS-CoV-2 or the MERS-CoV, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, MERS. These are all coronaviruses. Neocov is another one. And just to be clear, this is not a new virus. It was first discovered in bats from South Africa. So why are we talking about it now? Because the scientists in Wuhan have flagged two big concerns. Number one, it could start infecting humans. One mutation, that's all it needs. One more mutation and neocov could start infecting humans. Concern number two, the mortality rate. Neocov is apparently a mix of SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV. It is highly transmissible, like SARS-CoV, and extremely deadly, like MERS-CoV. Reports say 1 out of 3 patients could die. That's a mortality rate of around 33%. I'll put that number in context for you. The Wuhan virus has a mortality rate of 1.5% now. That's after all the vaccinations and boosters, 1.5. In 2020, it was around 4 to 5%. Neocov could have a mortality rate of 33%. So it is highly transmissible and dangerous. I know this might sound scary to many of you. That was our first reaction as well. Are we in for another disaster? A virus from a bat, scientists from Wuhan, and the month of January. We have bad memories associated with all three. But now is not the time to panic. Now is the time to test ourselves, to see if we have learned something from the last 2 years. For starters, see how credible this report is. It was published by scientists at the Wuhan University. Is it peer-reviewed? It isn't. And that should be a top priority right now. To get more experts to analyze the findings. We need as many brains working on this as possible. Here's another question. Has the World Health Organization seen this report? Yes, they have. Here's what a WHO official had to say, and I'm quoting, "Animals, particularly wild animals, are the source of more than 75% of all emerging infectious diseases in humans. Whether the virus detected in the study will pose a risk for humans will require further study." So the WHO wants more research, more data to decide on what to do next. And this is where the world needs to be more proactive. Last time we let China take the lead. We let the WHO formulate our response. And we all know how that turned out. So this time we must push for more transparency. How was this report made? Why were the scientists from Wuhan researching this virus in the first place? What kind of research are they doing? All of these questions need to be answered, and this is not about panicking. This is about a science-based response, something China did not have the last time. Right now, 3 groups are involved in this study: China, Russia, and the World Health Organization. We need to expand this circle because neocov has the potential to be deadly. Like I said, it only needs one more mutation, and it could jump species. So here's what we need: transparency and preparedness. Our first priority must be studying neocov, understanding the nature and risks of this virus. At the same time, we must prepare an effective playbook. What should we do if the virus does jump species? Do we go back to lockdowns and flight bans? Or do we have more logical and targeted strategies? The world is still paying for China's lies from 2019. We must ensure that there is no repeat in 2022. And from biological viruses, let's turn to the digital kind. On Thursday, Iranian citizens who tuned into their state-run television channel were in for a shock. The channel was hacked, only for 10 seconds, but it created quite a ripple. What did the hackers do in this time? They beamed photos of Iranian dissidents. They called for the assassination of Iran's supreme leader. Who exactly is this shadowy assailant? Tehran is pointing fingers at an old enemy. Our next report tells you more.
Photographs of dissidents and a call to kill Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
ولی امروز ما همچنان افتخار میکنیم که وقتی گفتیم مرگ بر ارتجاع پاش ایستادیم همچنان که
These pictures beamed across the Iranian state television network on Thursday. The live broadcasts were hacked. It was a major embarrassment for Iran. Tehran is blaming an old rival for the hack, the People's Mujahideen of Iran. The group has long campaigned to overthrow the Islamic Republic. Now it seems to be getting active again. It had participated in the 1979 revolution, but later fell out with Iran's first supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. In the 1980s, the group joined forces with Saddam Hussein. It fought alongside Iraqi groups in the 8-year-long Iran-Iraq war. In 1981, Ali Khamenei was targeted in a bomb attack. He survived, but the attack left his right hand paralyzed. The People's Mujahideen of Iran was blamed for the blast. In the years that followed, the Iranian regime launched a crackdown. Thousands of Mujahideen members were killed. The group did attempt some retaliatory attacks, but largely remained in exile. In recent years, its members have been trying to make a comeback. Several Western powers have taken off the group from their terror lists. The European Union made the first move in 2009, followed by the United States. It removed the Mujahideen from its terror list in 2012. Former US President Donald Trump went a step further. Hawkish officials like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo supported the Mujahideen. The group is now largely believed to be active in Albania, and it is targeting Iran at a critical time. Attempts are underway to revive the Iran nuclear deal. The Iranians are locked in tense negotiations with the United States. The White House says that the agreement is in sight, but there are roadblocks along the way. Former UN officials and Nobel Prize winners have published an open letter. They want the UN to launch a probe into a mass execution in the 1980s. Iranian authorities have been accused of executing thousands of political prisoners. Many of them were members of the People's Mujahideen of Iran. The cyber attack might bring attention to these demands. Bureau Report, World is One.
In many ways, you and I are living in a whole new world. A lot has changed over the last 2 years, and that's an understatement. The way we work, the way we upskill, or even the way we meet new people. Online dating has become the new normal. While these apps have been around for a while, more people signed up on dating apps during the pandemic. Those who were already on these apps began using them more frequently. In 2020, Tinder recorded its highest daily swipes, 3 billion swipes. This was sometime in March 2020. The global lockdowns began around the same time. Between March and May 2020, OkCupid recorded a 700% increase in dates. Bumble recorded a 70% increase in video calls for the same period. Fueling this surge were global restrictions. People were locked up and lonely. So they were swiping left, right and center, all in the hope of some human interaction or some romance perhaps. Also swiping were scamsters in the hope of finding possible victims. And they happen to have found plenty. Let me show you some numbers from the United States. In 2021, Americans lost $343 million to online dating scams. $343 million. That's the figure for just the first 3 quarters. By the end of 2021, the figure is likely to have touched $500 million. All of it lost to online romance scams. A lot of you must be wondering, what kind of scams are these? So let me try and explain. Online dating scams normally start with people faking their identity. They make fake profiles, then befriend real people and extort money with fake stories. The person may ask for money to top up his or her phone, or ask you to send money for some medical emergency or some other fake crisis. There have also been victims or instances where victims have been used for laundering money. Let me tell you one story from Queensland, Australia. A 49-year-old woman thought that she was falling in love with a US Army official whom she had met online. What she actually fell for was a trap laid out by a crime group. The group used her to launder $150,000. In the UK, an elderly man met a potential love interest online. He wanted to meet her, but the woman was in Russia. She asked him for $870 to make a passport and then continued asking for more money, sometimes on the pretext of visa formalities, some other times for medical insurance. The man ended up sending some $5,000 in all. And the woman/person he was interacting with suddenly disappeared. You see, it is not difficult to scam a person online. It is not difficult to fake an identity online, to stay hidden behind a screen, especially when there is a lockdown. Scamsters can continue having a conversation without the fear of their identities being revealed. The pandemic has made in-person meetings difficult, and scamsters have made full use of this. Now, a very interesting age group lost significantly more money. I'm talking about those between 60 to 69 years of age. Americans in this age group lost $89 million in the year 2021. A similar trend was observed in the UK. While the UK lost nearly $133 million to online romance scams in 2021, people aged 55 to 64 were found particularly at risk. What explains this? Do older people find it difficult to spot impersonators? Or do they trust people too easily? Experts have a different explanation. They say the elderly normally carry wounds of past relationships, and this makes them more vulnerable to those promising even a little love. Experts also point out that scamsters like targeting women above the age of 45. It is assumed that by 45, a woman is well settled, has a decently paying job, a house, or at least her inheritance, and this makes her alluring to those looking to catfish. In 2021, Interpol sent a notice to 194 countries. It asked people to keep their eyes open when dating online. This is what the notice said. In the initial stages, an artificial romance is established via a dating app. Once communication becomes regular and a certain level of trust is established, criminals share investment tips with their victims and encourage them to join a scheme. Victims download a trading app and open an account, buy various financial products and work their way up a so-called investment chain, all under the watchful eye of their new friend. This is the flip side of online dating. People are losing money around the world, and while there is no reliable data from India, there are many instances of men and women reporting such scams to the local police in India. So if you happen to be meeting someone online, look out for the red flags, and no matter what, do not send money. Let's talk about something a little less grim. Minnie Mouse, for example, the Disney character, has got a makeover. She has a new dress, a new bow, new pumps, and she looks very different. Celebrated English designer Stella McCartney has dressed the mouse. Disney thinks the new Minnie looks gorgeous. Many disagree. They say the new Minnie does not remind them of the mouse they grew up with. Here's a report.
Minnie Mouse has got a makeover. This is how she looks right now. Couldn't recognize her, could you? New clothes, a new bow, and a new color combination. Minnie still wears her signature polka dots, but now they are on a designer pantsuit. It's deep blue in color and looks a little dull, to be honest. Seriously, who did this to Minnie? English designer Stella McCartney. She has dressed some of the world's most popular women. Beyonce, Amal Clooney, Kate Hudson, Meghan Markle. It did not come as a surprise when Disney picked McCartney to dress Minnie. But instead of her iconic white, McCartney draped the mouse in deep blue. The pantsuit's on point, but what happened to the color? Disney unveiled Minnie's new look on the 25th of January. It's gorgeous, the franchise said. Many made a face. One Twitter user said Disney has turned Minnie into Hillary Clinton. Another bluntly called her clothes ugly. Doesn't feel like the Minnie I grew up with, complained an internet user. This is not the first time Minnie has donned a new outfit. The mouse likes to stay in vogue and get a new pair of clothes for every special occasion. This pantsuit is for an upcoming party. Disneyland Paris will soon be celebrating its 30th birthday. Celebrations begin on the 6th of March. And Minnie is party ready.
Share this wonderful day with me. Mwah!
McCartney believes the pantsuit is a symbol of progress. It is also in honor of Women's History Month. Good thing the outfit is temporary. Minnie Mouse will get her old robes back, the red dress and the iconic red bow. Just the way the world likes its favorite mouse. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Вроде посмотрела, так, тут напишу. Dzień dobry, Gieniu. Pierwsze słowa sobie. Лікня рашime apie tą, o tai paskui supranti, kad nupieštos, paskui iškarpytos rožytė atsiųsta.